request you all to welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Arif, for organizing this book launch. This is the book, and the title is the Khoja Shia Ithna-Asheries of East Africa, their quest for new socio-religious identity. And it covers a period from 1860 to 1960, which is around 100 years of our community history. Now, this book wasn't easy to write. It took me 7 years to write this book. And to write a book about our community is not easy. Our community has got varieties of dimension from which you can write a book. So what I had to do was to bring all those dimensions together and then make a narrative and then make an interesting story so that when you read this book, it makes it appealing and you want to sort of get into the book. And it appeals to all sections of our community, male, female, and children and youth as well. Now, I just want to pass 2 or 3 messages to you as to why it is important to buy this book. When I say buy this book, it's not that you're paying me for this book. All the money that you pay would be going to the Charities of Africa Federation. But it is important to have this book in every family and then gift it to your children and grandchildren so that they can understand how important it is where they came from. So this book is about our very interesting heritage. It is a book about our intellectual struggle, and it is a book about our community history of 160 years and our fight to retain the faith. We go back 700 years in Islam, and we have a community history of around 160 years, which is what this book is all about. That's the first message. The second message is that when you read this book, you will see 2 historical norms of our community. The first one is the economic stability, the norm, a historical norm of why we moved from Gujarat in India to East Africa. This is purely to make ourselves economically stable. And so we started our journey. The first person, according to the records that are available in East Africa, arrived in Zanzibar around 1839. So that is where we actually began. But the Khojas were present even before that. When you read this history, you will know about it. So from 1839, we settled in Zanzibar and then moved into the coast of East Africa and then into the interior, first to Tabora and then Ujiji and then to Burundi, Rwanda, and Congo. So by 1960, we were around 10,000 individuals in Tanganyika, Zanzibar, Uganda, and Kenya. And we had 1,000 different businesses. So in simple terms, for every 10 individuals, we had 1 business, and for every 2 families, we had 1 business. That was the extent of our entrepreneurial contribution to East Africa, which we by then called it home. So that was the first norm. The second norm is the preservation of our socio-religious identity. Our great-great-grandfather, when they established themselves in East Africa, they wanted to preserve their faith. They wanted to preserve their socio-religious identity. And so what they did was to institutionalize first into a Jamaat, then into a federation. And this is how they made sure that a community, a faith-based community, is given to the generations after generations. And today, we have that community that they decided to start around 1888 in Zanzibar. That was the first Jama, 1881, first mosque they built in Zanzibar, and formed the first Jamaat in 1877. And that rule-based community is with us today, and we are enjoying the fruits of their labor and their blood and their toil and their sweat. And the question, of course, for us is that what sort of community will we be giving to our children in the years to come? So this is the second norm that you see. The third and the final message that I want to give is that, sadly, as a community, we are not interested in our history. We don't see archival material in our Jamaats preserved. And that's a very sad thing. Not only that, but sometimes we laugh at our history because we think that it's not that important. It is very important for all of us, because we must know where we came from and how we came to where we are. Whereas we may not be interested in our history, others are. When I was in Mashhad, and my son, who is the editor of this book, was in University of Jordan, and he was addressing the students, postgraduate students, who were from Turkey, Iran, and other places. And when he talked about this arc from 1860 to 1960 and beyond, talked about our history, they were very much interested. There was a pin drop silence, and they marveled at this history, particularly at the two things. The first thing was that they found it courageous that amongst our great-great-grandfathers that they decided to change their religion from a very comfortable Khoja belief to become a Khoja Shia Ithna-Asheries. They found it that courageous. It's not easy to change one's belief, but they did. And second thing they marveled at was that the population or the numbers of our community worldwide is around, in my estimation, 90,000, maybe 120,000 at the most. And for a small community of 120,000, we have settled globally. Not only that, we have built sacred places where we settle. Not only that, but we serve humanity, even as a small community. They marvel at all these things. And they want to study the model that we have adopted as a community who can survive for 160 years without land, without a country, without land, without an army, without the oil wells. And yet we have survived. So there must be something very tangible about this community. And this is what it describes, that tangibility. Now, we are a community which is a resilient community. We are an adaptable community. We are always searching for truth in Islam. We are not a Khoja community. That's a misnomer. We are a Khoja Shia Ithna-Asheries community. So, this book only talks about the first 100 years, from 1860 to 1960. I'm writing a part 2 from 1960 to 2022. Now pray that I finish it, and that I can come and I can talk to you about that aspect of the book. But why am I writing from 1960 to 2022? Is because we have now become a global community. We span all the continents of the world. And as we became a global community, there are different challenges that we are overcoming now. When we became a global community, we have to move and cross boundaries. We crossed religious boundaries, we crossed ethical boundaries, we crossed language boundaries, we crossed cultural boundaries, and as we crossed these boundaries, we came across challenges. So today we face global challenges, interesting challenges as a community. And the one very important challenge that we face is that do we want to remain a very closed sort of community with thick wall around it so that we can only admit Khoja, Shia, Ithna-Asheries amongst us? Or do we open up the boundaries, or rather the walls, and become a thin community and allow everyone to come in so we can lose our socio-religious identity? No. We have to now define where we want to have a comfortable line drawn so that we can retain our socio-religious identity as well as allow our community to grow. This is a big challenge for us. So if we want to retain our socio-religious identity, then we better be passionate about it. Now, this book has a story, which is a story about us. It is a story about your grandfather and your great-grandfather, and it is a story about your community. Any amount of money that you spend is not going to be wasted. So it's a book which has got an investment. And when you have my signature in it, I'm sure it will be even more valuable in years to come. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Sipten Panjwani. These books are available on the treasurer's desk outside, and